Good morning, Dan and Amy. Last night in Wheaton, State Representative Jeanne Ives, as anticipated, Republican from Wheaton, announced her candidacy for governor of Illinois. She is launching a primary challenge to Bruce Rauner, saying that this is the choice for Illinois Republican primary voters.
I choose tax-paying Illinois families. Governor Rahner chose the political ruling class. That's the difference. That's the choice in this election.
And it was a pointed speech that she gave, both directed at Governor Rahner and about the choice before Republican primary voters. Let me give you a little taste.
My son, the Army Ranger, and my son, the Navy pilot, could teach Rahner a few things about the difference between pretending to be a tough guy and actually being a tough guy.
Zing. And Ives also said that we were promised a conservative reform governor, and instead we got an Ivy League gender studies professor.
Oh.
Yeah, there were a lot of
Hello.
a lot of body blows in that speech, but it's time to level with Illinois Republicans and Illinoisans in general if you want to change the course of this woefully mismanaged state. For more on her candidacy, we're pleased to be joined by State Representative Jeanne Ives, Republican candidate for governor. Jeanne, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on this exciting day.
And so you kind of played that clip that frames the race a little bit in terms of the choice between who you represent and who Rahner has chosen to represent in his 3 years as governor. Why don't you elaborate on that a little bit more when you say that Rahner has chosen to betray us, those are the words you used, and fall in with the ruling class?
Well, you look at his record and what he said on the campaign trail when we all helped elect him. He said he was going to do something, put in reforms, protect people. He's failed in every single way, from sanctuary state to taxpayer funding of abortion to bailouts of public utility companies. He has failed to deliver on the promises he made to Illinoisans, and especially on taxpayer funding of abortions, where he lied. He betrayed our party and our values. And so, Republicans take people out of office that don't do what they say they're going to do because we can't trust him anymore.
But Rahner,
so that's what this is about.
But Rahner is suggesting and spending a lot of money to advance this claim that he's the guy that's fought Madigan, and but for Madigan, we would have had conservative reform policies in Illinois back on the right track, and it's kind of all Madigan's fault. Don't blame Bruce.
Yes, he wants people to believe that he's been fighting Mike Madigan, but he actually instituted a very social and economic liberal agenda supported by Chicago Democrats like his friend Rahm. And so you look down the things. Look, Chicago Democrats and Mike Madigan never implemented sanctuary state-style bills. They never put in a tax on crisis pregnancy centers. They never did junk science on transgenderism. They never did public utility bailouts. So, look, his entire agenda, the things that he actually signed into law, were not even proposed by Democrats when they had complete control of the entire process.
Money.
So he hasn't been fighting Mike Madigan. He's been doubling down on the things that he's wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think a lot of well-versed voters in Illinois understand that. But the question is, this juggernaut of Governor Rahner, he has got a lot of personal wealth. How do you fight that? Because you know that he's going to throw millions of dollars into his own campaign.
And it's not going to matter. Governor Rahner has already beat himself. He has no base. He has no base, and you cannot buy back trust after betrayal. And so he talks about his field organization. Well, I'll tell you what. Here's what a field organization looks like. It looks like 16,000 signatures in 4 weeks. That's a good field organization. So he's not going to be elected in the Republican primary because no Republicans trust him.
And so one of the arguments is that Jeanne Ives can't win, and that can't win argument is both against Rahner because of his money, as Amy was articulating in the primary, and also because against, let's say, Pritzker in the general because you're too conservative. Address that.
That's just not true. 85% of Illinoisans believe that Illinois is on the wrong track. And you've already got the beginnings of a tax revolt, and of all places, Cook County against the soda tax. And you've got an entirely maligned property tax assessment system in Cook County, too, which people are onto that scam. And you have even Democrats calling out Democrats who have been in office for decades about that. And we're going to highlight the problems there. And people are going to listen to a reform message because we have no other choice. Well, Illinois is bankrupt. Chicago is bankrupt. And people understand that you cannot tax or spend your way out of this. J.B. Pritzker is just going to be a supersizing of all the bad policies we've had in the past.
That's a fat joke.
And nobody's signed on to that agenda.
So there have been rumblings that you are going to run. Of course, you made the official announcement last night. Prior to last night, has anyone from the Rahner campaign contacted you to try and persuade you not to run for governor?
No, they have not. They think that this is just going to all blow by the wayside and that they'll be fine. And that's a huge miscalculation on their part because, we constantly hear from people every day. New people contact us to help and volunteer with our campaign, and they're excited to have a real choice in the Republican primary.
You said in your announcement speech that Rahner runs from his record and you run towards your record. You want people to assess his record as 3 years of governor, your record as 5 years in the state House. So what is that record, your record?
Well, I absolutely. I want people to go back 5 years and look at the bills I filed. They have all been focused on giving taxpayers relief from this enormous tax burden that they have in the state of Illinois. It's about giving businesses the freedom to do business as they see fit. It's about standing up for the values of social conservatives as well. So, look, my record is, I have opposed tax increases while proposing spending reforms. And I have stood with business on vote after vote after vote. And Rauner has not done that. So, I would look at my record in terms of what I've done in terms of transparency, my votes to take on public corruption, and my votes where I've worked across the aisle with some of the most liberal Democrats on policy, even just this last year, from protecting property rights to protecting health care networks in the state of Illinois. I've worked with Democrats on some of the most far-reaching policy.
Are you willing to debate against Governor Rauner? And are you going to suggest that you do so?
I would relish the opportunity to debate Governor Rauner.
Yeah.
Do you think he'll take her up on it, though?
Well, he's going to have to do at least some of the debates, the ABC7, the channel, the TTW, the kind of the standard one, City Club. I assume he'll do those, but we'll see. If he doesn't, that becomes a campaign issue. Jeanne, so in the modern context, people may have forgotten because it's relatively recent. You have to have a running mate if you run for governor. It's no longer the lieutenant governor runs independently. So you had to choose a running mate. You chose a former state representative from the Quad Cities named Rich Morthland. Tell us about Rich Morthland, your running mate, part of your team, if you were to be elected, and what he brings to the table and kind of how the two of you work together.
So Rich Morthland is a farmer. He's a community college professor. He's a former state rep. He's currently serves in elected office in Rock Island County. And he is the salt of the earth. He is cut from the same cloth as I am. He is just as determined to stay here in Illinois and build his family and restore opportunity here. And, I just couldn't pick a better running mate because he represents a forgotten part of Illinois and a forgotten class of people. We are not just the suburbs in Chicago. We have pockets of people that the Chicago Democrats, through their policy formation and what they've enacted in law, have forgotten to take care of our smaller communities, our farming communities, and those who really need help. And so Rich is going to help me on those issues. He sits on Rock Island, just across from the Iowa border, and he can testify to the out-migration that is happening time and time again as people just move across the border for better economic climate and better personal living conditions. So that's why we picked him. He's just perfect for this campaign.
And speaking of kind of regions of the state, thinking about the state regionally, it's always been my contention, just based on the numbers and where the population is, the Republican Party cannot be will not be a majority party in this state unless we are the party of suburban Cook County and the Collars. And that also goes for candidates running statewide. And so I wonder if you have a specific message. Maybe that's not limited to the suburbs, but that's particularly pronounced for suburban families.
So that's a good point. I mean, obviously the population is centered around suburbs in Cook County, and we need to. But we're an entire state. But look, there's nobody who's been hurt worse under Democrat policies, and quite frankly, Bruce Rauner's policies, than suburbans who have the highest property tax burden in the state, and overall Illinoisans who have the highest property tax burden in the country. So suburban voters have been told that Governor Rauner wants to freeze property taxes. That's the wrong solution. We have to lower property taxes in the suburbs. People are getting forced out of their homes. They're leaving simply because of the tax situation, and they're fleeing the state over it because they can't afford their property taxes. You're renting your home from the government. That has got to stop. And the the 32% tax increase should be put on the back of Governor Rauner, who failed to engage with those 15 surrender Republicans who voted for it. He didn't even talk to them prior to that vote. That is his tax increase just as much as it's Mike Madigan's and the 15 Republicans. And that all that tax money is going to do is going to filter back through that horrible education funding bill that he signed into law to Chicago public schools. Remember, 1 week that bill was a disaster. The next week he signs it, and Rahm Emanuel's saying we got everything we wanted and more. Well, that and more comes out of suburban taxpayers' wallets. That's unfair.
Jeanne Ives, as a mother of 5, how do you think that could help you when you become governor of Illinois?
Well, look, I've learned how to say no.
Oh, yep. There you go. Remember, without rules, there's chaos.
Well, not to mention, you've got you're a family full of intellectual assassins as well as actual assassins. You mentioned a few of them in your remarks, but for people who aren't familiar, your husband, 2 of your sons, in addition to you, all military.
Just like most parents everywhere, I am very proud of my children.
Okay, well, but give us a little bit of background on your family for those who are not as familiar.
This is the we get to know Jeanne Ives section of the interview.
I know you're supposed to be...
and you're very humble. I appreciate because every time, that's what I love about you and I admire, because your humility is to be admired, because you don't boast and brag about, being a West Point grad and that you have very successful children, but we're asking you to brag now. It's okay.
Yeah, brag on
You're
your
in a
kids
safe
a bit.
space.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So, yes, I came out of a small town in Vermillion, South Dakota, and I went to West Point. And I graduated there, and my husband did as well, and we served in the military. And we, of course, encourage our sons to look at that as well. And so our oldest son is ROTC graduate from the University of Illinois in electrical engineering, which is probably one of their most difficult majors. And I'm so proud of that man. And he is currently serving up in Alaska. He's an Army infantry officer, and he's the executive officer of a Stryker battalion in a Stryker company. And Matt has also got his Ranger tab, and he worked enormously hard to earn that tab. And I'm so glad he's through that, because when winter hits, I think about those Rangers out there, with 2 hours sleep, freezing, and making it through training. And then our son, Nick, also graduated from West Point. But Nick is a contrarian, so he cross-commissioned to the Navy. And he is going to be a Navy pilot. He's in training down in Corpus Christi, Texas. So, yeah, we're very proud of their service. And actually, I guess I would say that's one thing I'm very happy that President Trump is paying attention to, and that's restoring the military's capability to actually defend this country. And that was a long time in coming, because I know firsthand, listening to what my sons have been going through literally for the last 4 years, how decimated the Army has become in terms of its training resources.
All right. She is State Representative Jeanne Ives, Republican candidate for governor. Jeanne, where can people get more information about your candidacy?
Sure. They can go to ivesforillinois.com. That's our website.
Ivesforillinois.com is the website. Jeanne, thanks for joining us. Good luck with the campaign.
Thank you.
And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.